Well, good morning, folks. It's the 12th of October, 2020, the Columbus Day holiday weekend here. Day 209 remote. That's all I have to say about that. You'll want to hang on here to the end if you are a snow lover. We will have our outlook here. You may not like it, but at least you'll want to hang on to the end here. Unfortunately, we're headed for a potentially very strong La Niña. We warned about this a year ago, that we'd be heading for at least a strong, moderate to strong La Niña, and now the models are pretty much in consensus with that, thinking that looking pretty strong here, to say the least, already in the moderate phase. Unfortunately, when you line it up with some other cycles, the negative PDO, it's just the cold Pacific, North Pacific there, and the warmer Atlantic cycle, AMO. And this map here is again showing ocean temperatures versus a year ago. So just a wholesale change in the Pacific. And unfortunately, this screams drought across the Americas as we go through the winter and fall season into next spring season, summer season, and also not so great news for snow lovers. Looking at this past week here, the way our retail clients like to look at it, this big map is versus a year ago. So this is 4 through 10 October. Here in the U.S., 2.2 degrees warmer than last year, fifth hottest in 35 years. So not good for seasonal merchandise sales, much above average national temperatures. 26% drier than last year, driest in 5, 12th driest in 35 years. So below average on that precip front, and that's good news for the home centers and outdoor activities. And overall store traffic, just not good for cold seasonal merchandise. Snowfall anemic, down 100% from last year's second snowiest conditions in decades last year to the second least in decades this year. This time last year, season to date, we were already the snowiest in 35 years with several systems that had moved across the U.S., and this year we're down 83% for the season. So again, it's not going to be a great snowy season, unfortunately, for this year. Across the world, Canada a bit warmer, fifth warmest in 35 years. Europe a bit cooler. Actually similar to last year, cool west, warmer east across Europe. Russia warmer, India warmer, Australia cooler, and China cooler. In fact, China's pretty cool, seventh coolest in 35 years. Down in Brazil, again, they continue their hot trend, 2.8 degrees hotter and second hottest in 35 years. So very hot and drought-like conditions down there as well. What we like to do here for our big customers is quantify the power of 1 degree on sale. So we'll key in on this, unfortunately, warm Columbus Day weekend that we just had here. It was 10 degrees hotter than last year, making it the #1 hottest Columbus Day weekend in over 35 years. Last year was the coldest in 7, so a big, huge change here. We've quantified the weather's influence on about 10,000 seasonal categories, and unfortunately, we like colder weather this time of year, obviously, for higher seasonal sales for coats, gloves, mittens, coffee, everything we tend to buy. So if we take our power of 1 degree rules of thumb here on the left, quantify again that 10 degrees hotter weekend, unfortunately. Soup sales off 10% just due to weather. Hot coffee, hot cereals down 20. Fall apparel boot sales down 30. Antifreeze for your car down 40. Coat sales, heating consumption, good news on your heating bill at least, down 50. And even the mice like to come in when it gets cold and snowy and rainy, down 70. One area good for mousetrap sales would actually be down with the Hurricane Delta. Anytime you have flooding with a hurricane, you can get a big surge in mousetrap sales, but not for the rest of the country here. We look at this week here through 12 through 18 October, 2.8 degrees warmer than last year, making it the warmest in 3 years, 16th warmest in 35 years. Cool down happening in the central U.S. That's some good news. Just probably won't entirely get to the East Coast here till the weekend. Driest in 5 years, 8th driest in 35 years we needed after all the flooding down in the southeast and Louisiana. Snowfall again anemic, down 43% versus last year, least in 3 years, below average, 13th most in 35 years because of all the precip across the Pacific Northwest and Northeast. Good news though, again for the southern Corn Belt and down south, farmers harvesting here, and weather is going to cooperate, it looks like. Looking at next week, 19 through 25 October, about a half degrees cooler. So this is some good news trend here. So this will be a brief spike in some seasonal sales demand. 17th coolest in 35 years. Still a bit above average overall along the East Coast, West Coast. Temps versus last year is that map inset left. So those cooler trends are good for retail sales. Precip, driest in 7 years nationally. 4th driest in 35 years. So a dry cycle here, much below average. Snowfall again, 41% less than last year. 15th snowiest in 35 years, but overall below average snowfall nationally. We've got a yellow dotted line here because unfortunately we think we have to watch for a Hurricane Sandy type scenario here. It's way out there in model imagination land, but the cycles that we looked at a year ago and continue this year certainly show some high risk for South Florida and New England. And the models have been hitting at that now for a few days. Don't like to get too excited about things that are, a couple weeks out, but this scenario is almost eerily similar to what happened with Sandy, a system developing way south of Cuba, and then getting stuck between a high pressure system and just forcing the system up the East Coast. Model's been hinting at this for a few days. Something to watch if you live along the Miami to New England areas. Again, this is just way out there. But again, ironically, Sandy hit on the 29th of October. And this is a model animation for the 25th with a similar scenario around the 27th. So let's keep an eye on this. Certainly something to watch. And we do not, again, think we're out of the woods with the hurricane season. The 2-week world aggregate here for the 12th through 25th period here, big map is versus a year ago. So very cool trends compared to a year ago across Europe. Good news. So that'll be some spike in some seasonal demand for coats, apparel, hot beverages. Here in the U.S., again, overall, we're going to have some cooler weather, but just not as good as last year. So again, not that great across the U.S. Canada looking pretty good. Canada's, again, much cooler than a year ago. So we've kept the snow lovers waiting long enough here. So we thought we'd talk about some of our trends here. This map left is snowfall versus last year. So of course it was anemic last year, least in many, many years. This year we have it up a bit. About 35% more snow than last year, but still 8% below average, 11th least in 30 years. So nothing to get too excited about unless you live in the Pacific Northwest or maybe the Great Lakes, parts of the Ohio Valley might have a chance for some above average snowfall. Unfortunately, these are probably going to come in a couple bigger storms for the Ohio Valley, Great Lakes. Overall, you'd say it would be a down season, but again, it could just come all in one big storm. So East Coast snow lovers, not looking good. We actually think it's quite a bit below average again. So obviously more in Philadelphia than you had last year, but more than zero is not that much. So not looking great. This will also be an expanding winter drought cycle. Unfortunately, again, we just think it's going to be a very dryish winter into spring, summer next year. And so this drought condition is going to expand. Good news, snow lovers. If we were to give our early snowfall outlook, we do think the cycles will, as La Niña begins to collapse, that next season's your big snow year. So most in 8 years next year, not this year. So again, some good news as we look way out there into the future here. So with that, folks, we hope you have a great week, and we will be back here this time next week.